Meine Güte, das ist ja hier eine.
I have a picture now, I guess.
Ja, meine Damen und Herren, ich
Well,
freue mich,
ladies and
dass
gentlemen,
der
I'm
NATO-Generalsekretär
delighted to
Jens Stoltenberg
welcome the
heute
NATO
bei uns
Secretary
in
General
Berlin
Jens
zu Besuch ist.
Stoltenberg
Es
here
geht einerseits
in Berlin. On the one
die
hand, we were
stattfindenden
discussing
regelmäßigen Treffen,
what we
jetzt
usually
ganz
discuss at these regular meetings that take place at any
Sondertreffen,
rate
kann man sagen, des
regularly, and now we're
in
preparing
Brüssel
the
am 25. Mai.
special
Dann
meeting of the
erste
heads of
Mal
state and
mit dem
government of NATO member states on the
Präsidenten
25th of May with the newly elected President Donald Trump for the first time. We are in agreement in saying that NATO is an indispensable guarantor of transatlantic security, and we will not only meet in Brussels, but this will give us an opportunity to see the new building for the first time. And I am very pleased that there's going to be a piece of the Berlin Wall exhibited there, which obviously, with which we obviously have a very emotional bond. We have a very changed security environment, and we as Europeans see this in a very special way. On our immediate doorstep, terrorist threats are actually also carried out in practical terms. We will reaffirm our commitment to the readjustments that we've taken in the NATO alliance as of 2014. This goes both for the Wales and the Warsaw results, and Germany feels committed to its contributions to this. And the Secretary General will address, on the one hand, the financial contributions of members of the alliance. Here, Germany has increased its contributions very significantly during the term of office of the Grand Coalition, but he will also address the individual contributions to the missions of NATO and what sort of contributions come from which member country and what sort of capabilities do we bring to this exercise. Now, Germany has been a very active partner in various ways. We are contributing to the fight against international terrorism. We have shouldered a long-term commitment in Afghanistan and are one of the larger contributors there. Also, as regards securing the eastern flank of the alliance, we have shouldered responsibility as a lead nation in Lithuania. So these are but a few examples, and Kosovo, obviously, our mission there has just been prolonged again. All of these different facets are of great importance. So you see that we match our words with deeds. Also in other parts of the world and in other missions. The last point that I want to highlight here is there's going to be one member state more that we will welcome in our family in Brussels then, namely Montenegro, and then we will be 29 members of the alliance. So I'm very much looking forward to this meeting in Brussels, and I would like to thank the NATO Secretary General for his visit here.
Thank you so much, Chancellor Merkel, and let me start by thanking Germany for your outstanding contributions to international peace and security. You contribute to NATO operations in many different ways, from Afghanistan to Kosovo to the Aegean Sea. And over the past few months, Germany has taken the leadership over one of our battle groups in the Baltic region. Your troops are now leading our battle group in Lithuania, and this is yet another example of how NATO is taking so much welcome the contributions of Germany to our alliance. And you are providing troops for NATO's quick reaction forces. And let me also thank Germany for your strong commitment to engaging with Russia. Defense and dialogue are both essential if we are to have a constructive relationship. We just had an excellent discussion to prepare for the meeting of NATO leaders in Brussels on the 25th of May. At the meeting, we will address two main topics. That is the transatlantic relationship, burden sharing, and NATO's efforts to fight international terrorism. First, on burden sharing. In 2014, at our summit in Wales, we all agreed to stop the cuts in defence spending, gradually increase and move towards spending 2% of GDP on defence within a decade. We are doing this for the security of our own citizens and for the security of Europe in a more uncertain world. Germany has increased its defence budget, and I very much welcome that. Burden sharing is not just about money. Burden sharing is also about capabilities and contributions to NATO missions and operations. And Germany makes key contributions on all these aspects. The other main issue we are going to discuss at the meeting in May is NATO's role in the fight against terrorism. NATO has been an active partner in the international fight against terrorism for many years. Our mission in Afghanistan was a direct consequence of the 9/11 terrorist attacks against the United States. And we continue training the Afghan security forces with Germany in lead in the north of Afghanistan. We are currently reviewing our training mission in Afghanistan, and we will take decisions on its future scope, including on troop numbers within weeks. Afghan forces will continue to do the fighting to secure their own country. And NATO will continue to provide training, advice and assistance to the Afghan forces. At the same time, all NATO allies are members of the global coalition to defeat ISIL. NATO is supporting the coalition with AWACS surveillance planes, and we also train Iraqi forces, and we help them to build defense institutions. We also work with partners in the region like Jordan and Tunisia, because we strongly believe that to build local capacity, to train local forces, is a key tool in the fight against international terrorism. So there are many issues we are going to address when we meet in Brussels on the 25th of May, and I look very much forward to welcome you to Brussels. So I'm looking forward to see you there. Thank you.
Christina Dunst, Deutsche Presseagentur.
Christina Dunst, DPA. A question to both of you. Do you support the wish expressed by the Americans that NATO becomes an official member of the anti-ISIS coalition? And Madam Chancellor, a question regarding the scandal in the Federal Armed Forces in Germany. The demands have been made to go back to conscription. What is your view of that?
To
begin with your second question, I think a general fundamental decision has been taken, and we should continue in that continuity to carry out the necessary reforms as proposed by the Federal Minister for Defense yesterday. What the Federal Armed Forces now need is predictability regarding its development, so as to make sure that the service that is, generally speaking, done in very good terms is continued, and the reforms mentioned by the Minister of Defense are correct and right, as I see, and appropriate. Now, your first question. We are right now engaged in talks about the extent to which NATO can contribute in an official manner to the efforts of the coalition. Talks are ongoing, as I said, and I encourage the Secretary General to continue these talks and perhaps to conclude them by the 25th of May.
As the Chancellor just said, this is a discussion which is now ongoing in NATO, and hopefully we'll be able to make decisions by the 25th of May when we meet together all the NATO leaders. But let me just underline a few aspects related to that issue. First, if NATO joins the coalition, it will not change the role of NATO, because NATO will continue to provide support. We will continue to focus on training. NATO will not be engaged in the combat operations. So no one has asked for a NATO role in the combat operations, neither in Syria nor in Iraq. But what NATO has started to do is to provide some support to the coalition with our AWACS surveillance planes, and also to do some training in Iraq. And I strongly believe that NATO has an untapped potential when it comes to building local capacity, training local forces. Because I think that one lesson we have learned from Afghanistan, but also actually from Iraq, is that in the long run, the only viable solution is to enable local governments, local forces, to stabilize their own country and to fight terrorism themselves. And if anything we can learn from Afghanistan is that perhaps we should have started earlier to train the Afghans. Now we have been able to end the combat operations in Afghanistan. The Afghans are responsible for the combat operations. They are at the front line. We are helping them with training, assistance and advice. And I really believe that that's a kind of long-term ambition that NATO should be much more engaged in training, capacity building, and not so much focused on big military combat operations beyond our borders.
If I may just briefly add that as regards the interpretation given by the Secretary General, I am very much in agreement with what he said, and I want to send out a very clear message that given the fact that we're engaged in negotiations right now or discussions, and if a decision is taken, this is not to be understood that any activity like the AWACS operations already ongoing is going to be enhanced. We've been very clear on that.
Ja, Frau Bundeskanzlerin, der
Madam
Generalsekretär
Chancellor,
hat ja angesprochen,
Secretary General mentioned that thought is being given about increasing the numbers of forces in Afghanistan. Would Germany be willing to up its numbers, the troops already in Afghanistan, beyond the ceiling of 800?
If an additional German contribution in Afghanistan actually would be welcomed by NATO.
Also, wir haben uns als Bundesrepublik Deutschland ja sehr dafür
The Federal
eingesetzt,
Republic of Germany has been very clear on its view that the Afghanistan mission ought to continue. We've made it equally clear that we're willing to take the lead in the north. We are also engaged in the process of coordination, the cooperation of roughly 20 member states on the ground, engaged in the country. So I'm awaiting for the time being the decisions, and I don't think that we are the first to be called for when it comes to upping the figures. I think what we have to do is to maintain stability in the north and to make sure that that is guaranteed in order to make it a predictable mission or operation. I don't think we are the ones that are mainly addressed when that request is made.
First of all, I would like to underline that no decision has been made. It's correct that our military authorities, they have asked for a modest increase in the military presence of NATO in Afghanistan. But there has been no decision taken. We are now assessing the requests from the military, and then we will make decisions within weeks. But it is extremely important again to underline that this is not about returning to a combat mission. We will continue to train, assist and advise, not combat operations in Afghanistan. Chancellor Merkel is right. Germany has played and is playing a very important role in Afghanistan, being the lead nation in the north, contributing a significant number of troops to our mission and operation in Afghanistan. And of course, if there is any increase, which is not yet decided, then we will go out and ask all allies and partners. And you have to remember that we speak about 28 allies, but also many, many partner countries. So if there is any request for more troops, that will be a request which is not specifically addressed to Germany. Let me just add one thing about the coalition, the previous question, and that is that you have to remember that all NATO allies are already member of the coalition. So NATO is in a way part of the coalition through our allies. So the question is in a way whether NATO as an alliance should be at the table coordinating with the others, or whether we should continue to provide support to the coalition. And I have a pragmatic approach. But it will not change the fundamental role of NATO because we will not be engaged in combat operations, neither in Syria nor in Iraq.
Andreas Rinke, Reuters, eine Frage.
Andreas Rinke from Reuters. A question addressed to both the Chancellor and the Secretary General. I would like to ask again, after the NATO commitments, what do you think of the proposal that instead of trying to achieve this 2% goal, one should rather go for a 3% target, which includes then development, economic figures, and also diplomacy, which may be just as important for stabilizing countries as the military. And Secretary General, do you trust that Germany will be able to meet this 2% target? Because one part of the government wants to meet it and the other part doesn't want to. Well, the whole of the government has adopted this decision that was adopted in Cardiff, subscribes to it. We will keep this target, abide by this target, and the previous years, as